Hello everyone and welcome back to PSGL here for PlayStation F9 here in Season 29 for Round 2 of the season. We're here at the Circuit Paul Ricard for the French Grand Prix. I'm your commentator Jackson and alongside me is Storm. Hello.
Good evening, back again in PSGL for F9 here on PS. We are in France for the French Grand Prix in Paul Ricard. I think it's going to be an interesting one, as we've seen across the different tiers, different tyre strategies and different weather conditions. It can be a little bit boring in the middle of the race, but hopefully the drivers that are here this evening, the 19 that are here, can provide some fantastic racing that they provided what we saw in a very chaotic Bahrain.
Yeah, that's all we can ask for is a race even half as good as Bahrain. I'm sure I'll be quite happy with it, as I'm sure many others will be as well. It was a fantastic season opener, drama throughout the field, and it was great because it left you guessing. You never truly knew what was going to happen next. But here we are at round 2 of the season, perhaps for Ricard, a track that leads to a bit less carnage than we perhaps saw in Bahrain, less crashes, because of course with the massive runoff areas you have here, in the event that you do have a coming together of drivers, then there's plenty of room for them to both survive the crash. However, that does not mean that we'll go accident free, because whilst it is long runoff areas, I mean, cars have been in the wall before around here, so never say never. But these guys in qualifying, it's a tricky track to qualify on because of those massive runoff areas. It's so important to not invalidate, but at the same time so hard to not invalidate. So these guys, we could well see maybe only 5 or 6 drivers after the first attempts at laps setting valid laps, purely because so many of them will invalidate, which is sort of something that as a driver you have to think about. Do you push early on, go for that absolute maximum, hit the track, go straight 100%, or do you perhaps go for a bit of an easier first lap? Just make sure you set a lap time. Don't necessarily push the track limits anywhere near as hard as you would later in the session. Maybe leave your best for last, or alternatively, maybe you want to hit full speed straight away, push the track limits to the absolute limit, and then find that limit earlier in the session so that you don't make those mistakes later on. And depending on drivers, depends on which way these drivers will prefer to do it. As we see Hype Scholz start his first flying lap of the session, as the first driver to start a flying lap of the session. And I guess we'll have to wait and see how many of these guys are taking it easy early on in the session just to get a lap, and how many of these guys are pushing on to hit the absolute limit.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting one, obviously, as you said, with the runoff areas. And obviously turn 1 and turn 2 is going to be quite tricky because you can easily invalidate it or get a time penalty, which will be quite crucial, I think, in the race, because you can pick up multiple warnings and multiple penalties. As we ride on board with the Pied Piper in the McLaren this evening, he is currently on the softs, as he's going to take us a lap around the Paul Ricard track in France as he comes down into turn 1 and 2. Hopefully he doesn't invalidate on this lap. Let me just get up all the telemetry, as he's got a little bit of a pack behind him at the moment on his he's qualifying lap at the moment. Now this part of the track you can also invalidate, as he will now go on to a straight that is quite long and is good for overtaking as well, but can be quite dangerous going into the braking zone, as we've seen a few times drivers have come together, as Hyped sets the fastest lap at the moment with a 1:29.4. As I say that, the GTX driver goes even quicker with a 1:28.2. It is his home race this evening. He is in home territory, as he won Bahrain last week in a very chaotic safety car race.
It's a very strong lap up the top by GTX there. I mean, but as I said that, we've seen some very competitive medium tyre laps there, and of course, like last week, not 100% sure of the exact delta difference between the two tyre compounds, but I mean, to be 6/10 off a soft lap on a medium tyre, that is certainly a strong lap there from Dudley, and Ethan not far behind, as the Pied Piper and the McLaren sets their first lap of session and he goes third on the soft. So it's not a great lap, but from watching the on-board, I think you could really tell they were one of the drivers that took it easy on that first lap. they weren't on the maximum, which is perhaps a method that will pay off later in the session. But also alternatively, maybe it won't. So we'll just have to wait and see if this strategy works out for the McLaren. Because of course we talk about race strategies and tyre strategy, which I'm sure will be something we discuss throughout this qualifying session. But qualifying strategy is just as important a lot of the time, because you just you have to find something that works for you, because every driver is different, and qualifying is one of those sessions where, because you have to be on the absolute limit, it is, you have to be comfortable. You can't be uncomfortable in qualifying, because you'll never be able to set a perfect lap, or anywhere near a perfect lap, if you're not comfortable in the session. But tyre strategy, that's something we're going to have to look at today, quite a bit of it. We've seen throughout the tiers that have already gone that there's been a range in strategy so far, and that's something that these drivers, I'm sure, will have to keep an eye on to make sure that they know what's going on, so that they can perhaps see which strategies are looking good and which ones aren't so much. And already we've got a mix of the tyre compounds that people are setting laps on. Softs, mediums, more softs than mediums, I must say, but those that start outside the top 10, of course, will have free choice anyway. So I'm sure we'll see at least half the grid, quite possibly, on a harder of the two compounds, or harder of the medium and hard, that is. But of course, softs are by no means a bad tyre, as Bas Bremer shows at the top of the timesheets. Just going just under a tenth quicker than GTX at the moment. Bas is in the Alpine. Of course, Alpine, this is their home race. As Black Yoshi now goes to the top of the times. Again, just under a tenth, 900ths quicker. And Black Yoshi in the Williams car there on the soft compound tyres. Another one of those drivers that looks to be aiming for just the outright best qualifying position on the soft compound tyres, rather than going for the perhaps alternative strategy, as it seems as more laps are getting set, more and more drivers are abandoning the medium compound tyres and switching to the softs, which do of course provide the optimal grip.
Yeah, as Bas Bremer is in the home manufacturer for the race in Alpine, as they are a French engine manufacturer. So as I believe there's a Sector 2 yellow flag, as Petuaka in the McLaren goes in P4 on the softs with a 128.3. So it seems like the 128 is going to get you potentially in the top 10, maybe just around about, if you can get in the low 128s as well. It's still a lot to play for. With 10 minutes left, we've still got a few drivers left to set lap times. So it's going to be an interesting end to qualifying.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a very close field so far. I mean, you say a 28 will get you a top 10. It's a very busy area, is the 128s, because it stretches from pole position being 128.0 to 10th place at a 128.9, and that's just after the first attempts in this session, and maybe a few second attempts in there as well. It is so packed there, and I'm sure as we see more and more drivers set those lap times, we'll see more and more drivers in that mix. And I mean, I imagine we'll see perhaps even a mid 127 at some point in the session, purely because look how close they are, Black Yoshi in particular, to getting to those 127s. With the track ramping up, the drivers perhaps getting a bit more comfortable, we could well see some lap times getting into the 27s, and that's when we'll maybe see a few drivers start to break through from the field. But equally, we could just see more and more drivers pile into that group of sort of cars that were within just a few tenths of each other. So it could go either way. Of course, the more drivers close to each other, the better the race we get, in theory. So I wouldn't complain if that is the case. But at the same time, if a driver goes out there and goes 3 tenths out of the field, that would be a great lap from them, as Cohen Rob goes to the top of the timesheets, 300ths ahead of Black Yoshi. Cohen Rob, you could say, slightly later in the session there to set his lap, so perhaps ever so slightly better track conditions, so we can't be 100% sure that he's out and out better class of the field at the moment. But with a field as close as this, it is really going to be about perhaps who finds themselves in the best piece of track at the end of the session, and who can keep the car on the track, which is surprisingly, I must say, I'm impressed with the amount of drivers that haven't invalidated so far. Only 4 drivers yet to sell a lap in this session, being Dan, Taimir Azim, Daniel, and X Felix 1. Some of these guys now on laps or beginning laps. So it's going to be so important to get that lap time in. But at the same time, looking at how close the field is, it could well be so important to get that absolute lap on the limit, because if you make sort of that careful lap, you maybe cost yourself a few tenths in each corner, and sort of find yourself maybe 4 tenths off your absolute sort of lap that you could do in a perfect scenario, as Felix one does invalidate this lap again. But if you find yourself 4 tenths off what you know you can do, that could be 10 positions, which of course is going to make a huge difference in this. So whilst you of course got to measure yourself and make sure that you don't step over the limit, it's so important to be absolutely planted and get yourself the lap time. Otherwise you could find yourself well down the order, as a few drivers have so far in this session.
Yeah, just reading the chat for the stream. A lot of support for MNT Ethan, who's in the Mercedes at the moment. He's currently in P14. Didn't have a really good race in Bahrain, so he's hopefully going to try and get the momentum in his season and get his season kicked off. He's 14th at the moment with a 128.9, and also there was some support also for IFRA Mentos, which he is currently in P7. I believe he is in the Ferrari, which he is out on track as he goes into the 127.7s and sets the provisional pole position time with a 127.7.
That is a fantastic lap there from IFRA Mentos. That is fantastic. They're 3 tenths out of the field, and it shows that is a strong pace for the Ferrari driver. Perfect time to start talking about him, really, as he goes top of the timesheets. And I mean, that pace is going to almost certainly be top level pace in the fight for pole, because yes, it is slightly later in the session than other drivers that have already set lap times, but equally that's a big improvement for Mentos there. So let's see if they can keep their name at the top of the timesheets. However, I imagine we'll see at least a few more getting at least close to it, maybe not overtaking it, but at least getting close to it as the session ramps up.
Yeah, it's definitely going to get now to the crunch time where the drivers will be setting their final few runs. These are just the banker laps, as we call them. So to set as a 127.7 as potentially as a banker lap, you can't fault it really, especially around France, where the track limits can cause an absolute nightmare for the drivers. And also, this is IFRA Mentos' first race this season in PSGL, apologies. So to potentially get a pole position and maybe even convert it to a race win, you know, that's not a bad days at the office for Ferrari.
Yeah, that would be a dream start, really. But it's so important to get off to a good start, but equally don't go too hard on your first start in a league of the season, as Felix 1 goes up into 2nd place there. He's had some trouble at the start of this session, but he's got right into it there as he goes up 2nd place, just 2 tenths off Mentos, as Patuca goes up into 2nd now, only a 10th off Mentos. So these drivers really starting to hammer in the quick laps now as the session builds up. But yeah, it is, these guys all so close. That little tenth you find here or there, that little mistake here and there, is going to make such a big difference come the final few laps of the session. I'm sure these guys out there on track at the moment will be rushing back to the pit lane to make sure they get one more run in this session. Yeah, impressive Felix 1 there, and validated all his previous laps. And well, now sitting 4th as Daniel goes up into 3rd place. But to come in with your first lap of the session and put yourself way up the order, that's a good start, definitely.
Yeah, as we are now getting into the final few moments, do tell us in the chat, who do you think will take that pole position? Will it be Mentos, or will it be somebody else who is further down the grid? It is going to be an absolute fantastic end to qualifying, as the drivers are now probably going to be rushing back to that pit lane entry to get in and get, well, potentially if they need to, a fresh set of tyres and set their final lap that they can, possibly potentially the fastest lap they can around the Paul Ricard track in France this evening.
A driver way down the order at the moment as Ethan's crashed. Ethan has crashed coming out of turn 1-2 chicane, and sadly there's no one nearby, so we can't have a look at that, but that is a crash for Ethan coming out of the chicane. Now that means that he will most likely be starting well down the order in this race. That's a shame for the Mercedes driver, as it's Once again, not looking like a great qualifying session for the Mercedes team. But what I was going to say before that is Timer Azim, who, correct me if I'm wrong here, was our pole sitter in round 1, yet to set a lap time in this session. It's not really going his way so far today, has it?
No, it's quite interesting that he's quite far down, the Aston Martin driver, as we will ride on board. He's got 2 minutes and 50 seconds to get round. It may be that he's invalidated the track limits this evening, as turn 1 and turn 2, as he's going to come to the start finish line, and let's see if he can finally get a lap in.
Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah. I've just noticed that issue.
Well, I mean, answer on a postcard for that one. What's happened there? I've never seen that one before.
I think he got the postcard and did Lando Norris. He signed, sealed, and delivered.
Yeah, that's a confusing one for sure. We'll pretend that didn't happen. So we'll continue the conversation. So yeah, I mean, I4A is still down at the bottom of the timesheets. Shockingly, given that he has the ability to teleport, something you think would make you quite quick around here. Yeah. I don't really know what to say about that. Yeah, Timer Azim heading back out on track as most of the field is now on an out lap. A few drivers in the pits and a couple already on their flying laps here. Dan Snyder coming through the final sector now in the Red Bull car. Is he coming to the end? It looks like he's coming to the end of a lap for him. It looks like he may have gone a bit earlier than the rest of the field going into the final chicane now. What can the Red Bull do out of the final corner? DRS is open. Up into 8th gear, across the line he goes 11th. Which, to be honest, probably isn't a bad place to start on the grid here. Because, I mean, that gives you such a choice in strategy. But with the amount of drivers that are going to do a lap now, it's hard to believe that he will be staying in that 11th position. We'll just I'm sure he'll be sitting with us to wait and see what happens to him, because such a train of cars just in the final section of the lap here, just cruising around. It's like real life F1 watching this. Honestly, they're everywhere. I mean, you wouldn't want to be one of the cars at the back of this train because you'd be a little bit worried that you're not going to get a lap in. The car at the very back of this group of cars at the moment is Daniel, who is currently sitting 3rd in the timings. Annoyingly, there's the yellow flag out there because of this mayhem in Sector 3, so we can't actually see the times, the actual session time remaining, but Daniel's still cruising, so, oh wait, well it isn't that comfortable. 15 seconds as he makes his way around the final corner. That should be able to get him to the line, but it's perhaps closer than the Alpine driver would have wanted, as he does begin his lap of the circuit Paul Ricard. But I'll be honest, we can't show you every single lap here as he's invalidated turn 1. Well, that's one lap we don't have to worry about. with the entire grid on laps, currently let's watch the current P1 guy of IFRA, Mentos, heading down the back straight towards the chicane. What can the Ferrari driver do? Can he extend that lead, or will he be topped in this session?
Yeah, it's now definitely going to be where we see who really wants that pole position. As just a quick mention, currently sitting in P3 at the moment is Daniel, but he has retired on the track, so he can do no further. As Karin Robb sets currently the provisional pole with a 1:27.6, that is now going to put pressure on Mentos, who is now going to come around in the last final few corners. As Black Yoshi goes even quicker with a 1:27.6. We'll keep on board with IFR Mentos. Is he going to cross the line? Is he going to be any quicker? Is he going to take pole position? He doesn't. Yes, he does. He takes pole position with a 1:27.5. Apologies there for the late delay on the leaderboard, as he looks like going to take pole position in Paul Ricard.
And the driver who was on pole last week does not set a lap. I think there's some glitches going on with Timer Azim, because there's got to be more to it than hasn't set a lap time. I mean, he's definitely not on an out lap, put it that way. That's a confusing one. Let's just hope that resolves itself rather than causing any issues for the lobby itself. As what? It does look like it's is that an AI controlling it? It looks like I honestly can't tell. I'm not an expert on these things. It does look like an AI there that's controlling the car.
It looks like an F1 car park at the minute.
Is it out of fuel? They can't be going 100 miles per hour and out of fuel, surely.
No, I think there may be an issue with the lobby.
Bass is in the pit, so hopefully when he does get in his garage, it will end the session. One can dream.
Well, the Aston Martin's just crossed the line.
Bass is in the pit, and Ty is holding up the session here. Well, everyone turn your eyes to the time remaining in the top left. Let's hope. Let's all hope that is the time remaining, and that we don't have any other sort of glitch. But yeah, I mean, whilst we wait for the session to run out, as we're watching some interesting things going on here with Time Regime, but whilst we wait for the session to end, what are your thoughts after that qualifying session?
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one, obviously. Different pole sitter this week. A new driver in F9 that we didn't see last week, with Mentos taking P1. Black Yoshi was up there last week, but had a few issues in the race. He was in the stewards this week. He got a 5-second penalty for pit lane entry. I believe he broke one of the guidance rules that is set out by our fantastic stewards in PSGL. So it's definitely going to be an interesting one. Obviously, Pechuaka up there again, Rob up there again. One quick mention, Baldini is up a lot higher than he was in Bahrain. He is sitting in P9. The Mercedes driver, I believe, he was quite far down, but he is hoping to get the first points on the board, as we are now going to have to, I think, have a lobby restart, because that's stuck on North.
Yeah,
one.
I'm seeing that apparently if Time Regime leaves, it might fix it. So we're just gonna have to wait and see if he does.
Yeah, they're just having a few technical issues.
And
we do
that's
apologise.
Good to see. Not good to see that Time Regime has had to leave, but it is good to see that the lobby is not completely screwed. That's good to see.
Yeah. So, as I will run you down through the leaderboard of qualifying, IFR Mentos takes your pole position this evening in PSGL F9 for the French Grand Prix with a 1:27.5 on the soft compound tyre. Then we have Black Yoshi in P2, Karen Rob in P3, Pechuaka P4, Dudley in P5, Daniel P6, Felix 1 P7, Bass Bremen P8, Bandini in P9, and rounding off the top 10 is Nicolas. In P11 is the hometown boy, which is GTX. In P12 we have Paudi. P13 the Pied Piper. In P14 we have Dan Schneider, and I didn't quite catch the rest of it.
Well, Time Regime has rejoined, which is hopefully a good sign. Hopefully you have no further glitches today. Yeah, Time Regime back in the lobby, that is good to see. I think he could well be a championship contender this season, so we don't want to see him having any technical difficulties early on in the season, because that would be very unfortunate, as it is very cloudy over the circuit for Ricard.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. I think someone's forgot to put the 50p in the light meter. So
yeah.
We'll be. If I tell you what would be what would amaze me, if that 127 that Mentos set, he was using a wet setup, because that would be insane. Because this cloud looks to me that we may be in for some rain, and if he's using a wet setup, then that 127 on a wet, wow, just simply amazed. But we are in for, it looks to be a fantastic race in PSGL F9 for the French Grand Prix in Paul Ricard. Turn 1 and Turn 2 will be the main action area for track limits this evening, and also a potential lap 1 incident may occur. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it doesn't, as the drivers will now complete a formation lap of the Paul Ricard in France. Any predictions this evening, Jackson? Anyone that you may think might steal the show, may give us
yeah.
a standout performance?
I think it's impossible to predict, really. It's going to be such a tough one for all of the drivers to avoid penalties. My only prediction is I think penalties will come into the come in as a factor, but perhaps for the race win in the end. But you know, it's such a close field. It's impossible to really predict who's where. It's easier to predict sort of what may happen. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to bet against Mentos getting pole position, but I mean, Black Yoshi, I believe he started second last week and he nearly got the lead into turn 1. So if you can have a repeat performance like that, then maybe, just maybe this time, maybe he's learned something from Bahrain. Maybe he'll take a slightly different line into turn 1 that perhaps work a little bit better for him this week, and maybe Black Yoshi, if he does get another good start, could take the lead early. But Carbon Rob, another driver that's been up there both weeks, could he potentially take the fight for the win? Something of note is the strategy as we look further down the order. GTX, of course, round 1 winner, starting 11th. Honestly, I don't think he'd be too disappointed with that, because he starts on the medium compounded tyres. Only one driver who qualified outside the top 10 choosing the soft, and that is Hype Scholes. And perhaps there the thinking is that either way everyone's doing the same amount of stops. Perhaps if he goes on the softs, he can put himself off strategy. Perhaps that grip early on in the race, compared to the medium drivers around him, can get him that bit of track position. However, it's hard to say that that's perhaps a winning strategy. However, it's definitely a strategy that can boost his position. And if the medium strategy ends up not working, he could put himself in a good position to jump the guys on the mediums, especially early on in the race.
Yeah, as now the drivers are now finishing up that formation lap, as we will now come into the race start. I will hand you over to Jackson for the race start and it going into that turn 1. It's going to be an absolute fantastic race in PSGL F9. I will now hand you over to Jackson. Jackson, take it away.
Well, the drivers lining up on the grid now for the PSGL Season 29 F9 Round 2 here in France. Final 2 drivers are lining up at the back of the grid now, and we await the green flags. All the drivers will have their heart rates through the roof, I imagine, right about now, as they are now all on the grid. Lights are coming on, the revs are rising, all 5 lights are on, and we are racing in France. Can Mentos get a good start? Will Black Yoshi get another good start? As we do have some timing glitch, apologies for that, but Black Yoshi going to go around the outside of turn 1. Can he pull it off? He's there, and he's all the way around the outside of Mentos through turn 1 into turn 2. He pushes Mentos off the road, but Black Yoshi does take the lead of the French Grand Prix. You have yellow flags further down the order. Going into the chicane now for lap 1. It is Black Yoshi leading the field through the first few corners of the lap. Can Mentos fight back here down the back straight? Or does Black Yoshi have enough of a gap as they make their way down the back straightaway? Colin Robb, can he perhaps get himself involved here? It looks like Black Yoshi's got a big lead though already. That is a great start there for Black Yoshi as he makes his way towards the chicane. We've got some wheel-to-wheel action further down in the field. That's Colin Robb, perhaps having to defend from Patuka, but he does hold on to position. As that's a car straight on to the background, that's Niklas. Niklas has gone through the bollards at the chicane and is going to drop all the way down the field from what was quite a good position early on. And the field is looking to go for quite single file quite early on here, which is a bit of a surprise. But Black Yoshi with an absolutely fantastic start to give him the lead early on ahead of Mentos, and well, it's 2 races in a row now that Black Yoshi...
Sorry to interrupt you. Mentos has retired from the race. He has gone into the wall, and I believe there is a virtual safety car. We have a virtual safety car. Mentos is in the wall.
That is heartbreak there for the pole sitter. He didn't have the best of starts, but I mean, he was still P2. But that is day over there for Mentos as he crashes out. And that is Felix 1 in the pits going for a lap 1 pit stop here. Does he perhaps have some wing damage, or is this a strategic call by the AlphaTauri driver? But that was a pretty crazy lap 1 there with Black Josh taking the lead early on, and some battling throughout the field. But it seems quite a lot of drivers struggling in these perhaps colder conditions than in qualifying. Not what they're used to. And well, it's been a very entertaining first lap of the race, and it's heartbreak for the Ferrari driver in Mentos, and that is a real shame for him, as it's a drive-through penalty for the race leader.
Just about to. Yeah,
Black
that is
Yoshi.
absolute carnage. and chaos happening in France this evening, as now the race leader, Black Yoshi, has a drive-through penalty that he must serve within 3 laps. So technically, Karin Robb is your net race leader with Pechuaka in P2, and Dan V28 will round off the top 3. It is absolutely going in France this evening, as we are still under yellow flags. I believe it might still be the virtual safety car. I'm not quite sure, but all 3 sectors are showing yellow flags at the moment.
I do believe it is a glitch, as the virtual safety car obviously did come in to give Black Yoshi that drive-through penalty. And the drivers are going at full speed, so that is a glitch there. So you may not see much overtaking for the next few laps. I mean, if you're going to take drive-through, now is probably the best chance, given what we've seen so far in this race. Black Yoshi stays out on the racetrack here. Perhaps thinks his best chance here is to pull away out front as the yellow flags continue to cover the circuit. Yeah, this is as it does now go green flag racing. Finally, it is back to green flags. And Black Yoshi, your race leader, with a drive-through penalty. Pulse has crashed. Race leader drive-through penalty. It's all happening here at the circuit, Paul Ricard.
Yeah, it's all kicking off at the moment in Paul Ricard, as now we are back under racing with DRS. As it's a sector 1 yellow flag, that is a Mercedes, which is MMT Ethan, as Felix 1 sets the fastest lap in the race so far. We are in the back under racing. The yellow flags are cleared, as technically Karin Robb will take the... Oh, is he going to go for a move? He's going to go for it. He's going to go down the inside, but Black Yoshi keeps the position. But Karin Robb is right on the back of that Williams. Is he going to go for the move? He's going to have a look for it. He's keeping behind at the moment, as Pechuaka is keeping nicely behind. He knows there's a battle up in front, and there's a potential for a race lead if he keeps himself out of trouble, as the Williams is fighting, it looks like Karin Robb at the moment, but he has got to serve that drive-through.
Yeah, that's heartbreak for Black Yoshi as well, as he gets that drive-through penalty. It is going to hurt him in this race massively. But of course, early in this race, of course, Karin Robb does not need to pass Black Yoshi here. But you could ask Black Yoshi there, loses the control of the car and is going to drop multiple positions here. I was just about to say that he's probably struggling a bit for pace, purely because he's just not in the right frame of mind. You've taken the lead on lap 1, but you then get a drive-through penalty, and he's just not going to be very happy at all right now. So I can imagine that he is a bit all over the place behind the wheel of that car at the moment, because, well, just imagine the emotions that he's feeling right now as he's seeing the race, what appears to be, slipping away from him. But it's tough there for Black Yoshi. The rules are the rules, and they are there for a reason. But Black Yoshi now down to 3rd place, and still with that drive-through penalty. It's going to be a tough race now for the Williams driver. However, he is... I mean, it's a long way to go in this race still, so he's still got a chance to fight back into it. He's definitely not out of the picture completely. But it's a tough start, and definitely not an ideal start there. However, it is an ideal start for Karin Robb, who finds himself out in front at the moment, but he does have Patuka right behind him as they make their way into the final sector of the lap. This is a close battle up front, and it is going to be interesting to see if these two start to battle it out, and maybe Daniel and Bas Bruma, the two Alpines, can get into that fight. Black Yoshi, I imagine he will come into the pits this lap, and he does. He goes a bit wide though on entry, but it didn't look like he gained any time from it there. However, perhaps a warning for that. However, I'm not 100% sure. But that is Black Yoshi into the pits, and will probably be coming out of the pits around about P17 at best, I imagine. Maybe if he's lucky, he might come out ahead of M&T, but that does not look likely here. Could also end up behind Felix 1, as it is a very long pit lane here, and it looks like that will be the case, as yes, Black Yoshi will come out in the 17th position there, and will have a long race ahead of him, because not only is he way down the order, he has no strategic advantage there, as he now gets a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings. It's all going wrong in the Williams camp at the moment, which is not what you want to see, but that is a tough start to the race for Black Yoshi. But we do have a very close battle up front between Karin Robb and Patuka.
Yeah, not a bad well, a bad day in the office for Black Yoshi, as there's a Sector 2 yellow flag, and that is the two Red Bulls, I believe, have come together. It is not going to be a good day in the office for the Red Bulls, as I think Dan and Carlsbury have had to come together. Looks like no damage has been caused, but they have, I believe, knocked down the order a little bit on the gap. So, but it's still all to play for, as GTX has got himself up to P7 starting from P11, and also Bas Bremer has got himself up to P4. The two Alpines are in 4th and 5th this evening in their home manufacturer Grand Prix. It will be definitely an interesting one. How do they do team orders? Will they work together to get up the grid? But it's all to play for.
It's a very close field at the moment. It does seem like Kyle Rob's got very strong pace up front, because he is, despite giving DRS to those behind him, he is still managing that gap very well. So he's doing a strong job here, as he is actually starting to pull away from Patuka a lot through this part of the lap. So perhaps it'll be Patuka under pressure come the back straight chicane on this lap, as he's almost out of DRS. I think he will just about get it on this occasion. But you have to imagine that if Patuka keeps up this current pace, he is going to lose the DRS to Kyle and Rob, and that will put the Alpines, who are battling behind. Is that Bas going up the inside of Daniel? Yes, it is there. And Bas up into the 3rd position. Could that be team orders, or is that pure racing? It looks like pure racing from this view, as you'd have battling further down the order. That is Dudley and FDR Bandini battling away through the flat-out right-hander now. And that is Bandini up a position, as that is a 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings to Ethan there. But deep into the corner goes Bandini, and that is let back through into the 5th position, Dudley. Bandini looking all over the back. He's going to stick his nose in there. That backs out of that eventually. Probably a smart move there to not risk his front wing this early on in the race. But that is Bas Bremer up and past Patuka, as there's some cars pitting, and that is including Patuka there, as it's a spinning Red Bull. And that is Carlsbury, who has gone around and is well down the order now. And it's all going wrong for Carlsbury at this stage of the race. Seen a few drivers struggling, and these conditions not looking very friendly for the drivers at the moment. But first round of pit stops is here, and some of these drivers trying that undercut early on in the race. Some of these drivers perhaps not liking the soft as much as others. But you have to say, if you're pitting now, there's no chance you're doing it on a one stop, surely, anyway. I would imagine you're able to do 20 laps on the medium tyres. Maybe I am wrong there. But that is an incredibly early pit stop, if you were going to do it. That's Patuka. That is Patuka around. He's gone to the hard tyres, and well, if he didn't like the softs, he's definitely not enjoying the hard so far, as he's gone around on his fresh hard tyres. I imagine he's just had no temperature there as he's come onto them. But that is Patuka around after pitting, and more and more penalties coming through now, as this track is so easy to do it on. As we have a battle between the Pied Piper and Hyped Scholes. Will Scholes fight back here? Doesn't look like it. Maybe he's going to have a look into the very high-speed right-hander. It would be a brave one up the inside of there. But perhaps correctly, Scholes backs out of that one. But the battle for lead is very close. Sorry, the interval is a bit not correct at the moment on my screen. I don't know if you're getting that as well, Storm.
Yeah, I'm having a few issues as well. The top, 8. I think it's maybe that they're quite close together that the game can't. As Daniel is in the pits, he has taken the lead just for a brief second, but as you mentioned, with the hard compound tyre, I don't think they're very suited for the French track in Paul Ricard. They are the quite slow tyre to the soft and the medium, so we will possibly see a more soft medium tyre choice use, as Daniel, funny enough, has picked the hard compound tyre and he drops himself into P12, as Dan gets a 3-second time penalty for corner cutting. I don't think the drivers will pit this early into the race, as they possibly will want to do the one-stop strategy, as we are on lap 8 of 27. This is going to be, I think, a great race for Bandini. He's got himself up to P3 after a really bad race in Bahrain, after all the safety car we had and everything, but he's doing currently well at the moment.
That's Jetsy, who has gone around there, and a penalty as he tries to rejoin the track there. That is a tough break for Jetsy, as they appear to have had a spin going through the chicane, costing them quite a bit of time putting them down further down the order as we have battling back here. That looks like perhaps a mistake from Daniel, as it looked like he'd ghosted there, so you'd perhaps imagine there was a mistake involved for the Alpine driver, who, as it appears to be, these hard tyres are not doing very well as the leaders are in. The leaders are into the pit lane.
Yeah, it's now going to be the pit stop window open for most of the drivers as Bandini, apologies, is in the pits now. Just a quick note, Black Yoshi is still currently in P17 after his drive through. He's a little bit off the pace at the minute. He's currently 13.5 seconds behind Petraka, who also had a nightmare on the hards as well. So there is going to be some blue flags now being shown to a few drivers as Bandini comes out of the P14 on the mediums. Big
pack of cars here. A lot of the medium runners who've had issues are now mixed in with the drivers that have just pitted for some medium tyres. Interesting to see this pack of cars have all gone to the mediums. Perhaps they believe they can go to the end of the race on the medium compound. It's going to be interesting to see what GTX, the Pied Piper, and Podium and the likes of those that started on the medium compound tyre. Let's see, as that's Brass has crashed. That is the Alpine of Bass, who has crashed out of the race, and a safety car is deployed. That is heartbreak there for the Alpine team, who have seen one of their drivers crash out of the race. Perhaps there was some contact there, because that is such a strange place to lose it on your own, given that it is quite a flat-out corner. So that is heartbreak there. What do you think's happened there then?
I think as he's just come into the corner just before the DRS zone, I think he's tried to extend the track limits and has just lost the car a little bit. But I tell you what, this plays perfectly for Hyped, who's sitting on the soft compound tyre. As he gets a drive-through penalty, oh, I've done the commentator's curse. I so apologise to Hyped. He was doing so fantastic and has just been given a drive-through penalty. That is definitely the commentator's curse. I am so unlucky for him, as GTX is in the pits. He's gone for a hard compound tyre, as the Pied Piper is in as well. Quite a few drivers, I think them hard compound tyre drivers will switch potentially as well. A lot of drivers in the pits from P6 all the way down to P15.
Yeah, these guys are starting on the mediums now, almost forced into going to the hards. Perhaps not the strategy they were originally intending to do. But now that they are on the hard compound tyres, they're going to perhaps struggle in these next sort of 10 laps or so to have the pace compared to those on the mediums. However, those that are on the mediums will have their tyres die after maybe 10-15 laps, and that'll be the hard drivers' chance to get themselves back into the race and potentially get themselves a chance at a victory here. But a shout out to Dudley, who's undercut pretty much the entire field. He has sort of come out of nowhere. He was in the top 10 for the first stint, but he's sort of flown under the radar quite nicely, avoiding incidents, but also not putting a show on exactly. But he pitted slightly earlier than those around him, and that strategy has worked out quite well because he's now found himself in the lead of the race. However, can those mediums last the race? That's the question. The safety car will certainly help that, but by no means does that lock them in. Interesting to see is Darn in 9th place on the soft compound tyre. I mean, guaranteed he's making another pit stop in this race. If he somehow does 18 laps on the soft compound tyre, that deserves a medal. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see if you have to assume he's going to go to the mediums later in the race. Perhaps if there's another safety car, his race can be saved. Perhaps even put him into a favourable position if another safety car comes out in this race. But at the moment, it's not a great situation for Dart. However, I imagine we could see him make a bit of a charge up the order in the next sort of 5 laps or so, whilst those soft tyres are the grippiest on the racetrack. But I would imagine after maybe 8 or 9 laps, he'll be beginning to either pit or start to drop down the order. As it would appear the safety car staying out for another lap here, despite the field being backed up pretty nicely, which is annoying. As Hyped does pit, he clearly... I'm guessing he thinks he can serve as driver on the safety car, which is not something you can do. This could well be a strategy. I don't see why he would do this as a strategy. But Hyped is about to get a bit of a surprise when his car pulls into its pit box. But that's sort of a not knowing the rules moment there for Hyped, as he will not serve as drive-through, as you cannot serve drive-through penalties under the safety car. Obviously that would be a big advantage if you could. But yeah, sadly that is not good news for Hyped, who has now lost his track position and his and also still has a penalty. So it's a double blow there to Schulz, as his race takes a bit of a tumble from what was looking like quite a nice situation until Storm cursed him.
Just to take a quiet note, if you look behind the current race leader, which is Dustley, there is 2 Alfa Romeos sitting right behind him. Now, if you was one of them Alfa Romeo drivers, team orders or teamwork would be very key on that safety car restart, because I would not want to be in their position with everybody behind them, because that could get kind of messy going into turn 1. Hopefully it doesn't. Dustley will eventually become the safety car once the safety car goes in. I suspect it will be this lap, as everybody is bunched back up on the grid, as hopefully we'll get back under racing very soon. But while we are under safety car, as the lights have gone out on the safety car, so Dustley will become the safety car when the safety car goes in to the pits. We'll just wait for the drivers to get ready for that and the safety car goes in. While we do wait, if you do like the streams and any content that PSGL does offer on PC and PS4, then do hit that like button and do subscribe to the YouTube channel, and do hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the action in PSGL for Season 29 on PS4 and PC. As the drivers are now just waiting for that safety car, Dusty is just bunching up the pack for the restart in the French Grand Prix in F9 for PSGL. He's not gone yet, as he's not at the start-finish line, but the safety car goes in quite early. He's just coming round to the start-finish line. We'll just wait to see where he goes, and I think he's gone. He has gone, as a lot of drivers have got 5-second penalties for severe collisions, as Dustley gets us back underway into turn 1. Where will the 2 Alfa Romeos go? They are going to keep it nice and tucked in on the restart, but they have got a Mercedes of Bandini right behind, with a Ferrari of Nicolas behind as well, so it's definitely going to hot up in the top 5 this evening in Paul Ricard, as we are on lap 12 of 27.
The Alfa Romeo drivers, they got very close on the restart. I would imagine a bit more, as that's a yellow flag further down the order, and that is, I don't actually know what they are for, actually. I don't. That, I can guess it's Felix, because he has, that's 2 cars with absolutely no front wing. I'm not quite sure how that's 3 cars with no front wing. Well, this is, it's like they've converted their cars. That's a battle for no front wings, but we do have a battle for those that do have front wings up at the front still. Bandini up into 3rd place on the medium tyres. Look at all over the back of Dudley is Carwin Robb, who's putting the pressure on the Williams driver at the moment. But I thought the Alfa Romeos would leave a bit more space, as GTX is dropping down the order even more now as he gets passed by Niklas there in the background. But the hard tyre's not working at the moment, but they've just got to hope that they do begin to come back in later in the race. But yeah, Carwin Robb all over the back of Dustley at the moment. Can he keep this pressure up as the battle of the drivers without front wings continues to happen further down the order? I'm not. Did you have any idea what's happened here? As that's into the pits comes Ethan.
I think with the damaged wings was the safety car restart. I don't know who was at fault, but there was about 4 drivers with dangerous driving 5-second penalties. So if they don't serve them, they can send them to the stewards, and they will get removed with the race director. As Felix 1 is out of the race, Sector 3, yellow flags, I believe that is in the pits. So he is out of the race for this evening in the French Grand Prix in PSGL. That won't cause any safety cars or VSCs, we hope, as I'm on board with GTX in the Alfa Romeo, the hometown boy this evening in his home race. There's a little bit of a battle, as we've got a battle behind him with Dan and the Pied Piper, I believe. Has he got the move done? He has got the move done, and he's up to P6 on the softs.
Dan using the softs is the best of his abilities here, as he really needs to use these tyres whilst he has them, because they're not going to last very long. Just a quick thing on Schulz, who of course had that drive-through penalty. Because of all the carnage that happened on the restart, he's still 11th. So Schulz there is, thanking his lucky stars that he somehow he's only just outside the points it is still reasonable to assume that Scholes could well score points in this race. Which, I mean, if you told me that under the safety car, I would not have believed you. But it's all really happening. It's sort of got to feel bad for those drivers that did get incidents on that restart though. But it's up front, it's been pretty clean. And I'm sure once DRS is back to being enabled, we could well have a battle for the lead. Because we've got a few drivers up here at the front, all with strong pace. And it's very, very close at the moment. And there's yellow flags. That is Ethan, who has gone around in the final sector of the lap. That's a shame for the Mercedes driver. It's not been his day so far. The only good news that Mercedes can take away from this is that Bandini is currently running up in the 3rd position and currently not far off the lead of the race, and that certainly would balance out the day for Mercedes. If one driver has a bit of a bad day and the other one wins it, that would I don't think they'd be too disappointed with that one.
Yeah, I do apologise there for the slight interruption, but it's all fixed now. So we are on lap 14 of 27. We roughly just over the halfway mark in the French Grand Prix in PSGL for PS4 in F9. As Sector 1 and Sector 2 yellow flags, I believe that is a Haas, or is that a Williams? That is Black Yoshi, I think, has had an incident. And there's also a McLaren.
I hate to interrupt. That's 3 incidents in one go, I think. There. All 3 separate spins, I believe. Hyped, Patuka, and Black Yoshi have all had a spin on their own at pretty much the same time. Is there royal? I mean, they're in different. I mean, Black Yoshi and Patuka down at turn 2, but Hyped down on his way down to the backstretch. That was a strange one there, to say the least, but we do now have a battle on for the lead of the race.
Yeah, it's definitely getting quite interesting and quite hotting up in the French Grand Prix. As we saw in real life with Max Verstappen and with Lewis Hamilton, we are going to have a Williams versus Alfa Romeo battle. Potentially the Mercedes of Bandini can get involved in this. Nicolas can also get involved. As Nicolas, as I am so sorry, I'm giving commentators curses out this evening, unfortunately, as he gets another 3-second time penalty for, as it looks like Karen Robb is right on the back of the Williams driver of Dustley. Is he going to go for the move? Oh, Dustley gets a little bit of understeer as Karen Robb is now going to put the pressure on. Is he going to go for the move? He's having a look. He is going to keep that car nice and tucked in, and he's going to wait for the moment to get that overtake done for the race lead.
He is all over the back of the Williams at the moment. It's been a great pressure put on here by Karen Robb, who's shown good pace throughout the race here. And at the moment it's really demonstrating that again. As at the round goes Dustley! Dustley's lost the rear end. I think he may have just about kept that out of the wall, but that's down to 3rd place for Dustley. Karen Robb to the lead of the race. The pressure has paid off here, as Dustley has made a mistake. And it's just, it's another Williams losing it on traction. I mean, if he's kept that out of the wall, that is quite the save. Because that thing was heading, I mean, it looked like that thing was going to embed itself in the barriers at one point, but it's a good save there from Dustley to keep his car in the race. And if he can sort of, I don't know, sort of get himself back in the right mindset and sort of forget what was just happened, because that was quite the scare, perhaps he could get himself back into the fight for the lead here between Bandini and Karen Robb. He could really do with those two battling now, so that they back themselves up a little bit into him. But that's quite the scare there for Dustley, as I'm sure he's well, he's going to have to settle down a bit now after that one. But FIA Bandini, is he close enough on this occasion to go for a move on Karen Robb? Doesn't look like it at the moment, and Karen Robb has got strong pace so far today. Can he keep it up? He has got a little bit less ERS than Bandini at the moment, same age of tyres and same compound of tyres, so they're fairly balanced out on that side of things. But it's all going to come down to the perhaps the ERS strategy at this stage of the race, looking at how different they are. Only maybe 20 or 30% in it, but still ERS makes a big difference on this game. Not as much necessarily as last year's game. DRS, of course, I think that makes a huge difference, I've noticed anyway, on this game. So perhaps if Bandini can just cling onto that DRS, maybe save a bit more, perhaps some fuel, perhaps some ERS, and save that way, maybe then he could put a challenge on for the lead of the race. But at the moment, Bandini not really putting anywhere near as much pressure as Karen Robb put on to Dustley just a few laps earlier. But at the moment, it's looking fairly comfortable between the top few drivers. as Dudley is just about clinging onto the DRS of the top two. And, I mean, credit to him there for keeping the fight up after that scary moment just a lap ago.
Yeah, as Car Rob, it's obviously showing that he's got the pace and maybe the right setup for this evening. As we know on F1 2021, the setup is the most crucial and important part of the race, as it can potentially get you a race win, as it looks like Bandini is right on the back of Car and Rob.
It's close racing here at the Circuit Paul Ricard, as there is battling further down the order here between Carlsberg and Porty. Porty actually having a very bad exit there that could well let Daniel in the Alpine around the outside as they go into the flat-out right-hander here, making their way down towards another high-speed right-hander, really putting the pressure on the tyres, especially the left-hand side tyres here. And Daniel isn't able to make that move stick, but always going to look to the outside. Not quite. He's been chopped off there, as there's a ghosted car in the mix there that just, I think, just wants to join in, really. As the Red Bulls perhaps have swapped positions there or something. I'm not quite sure what's happened there. Yeah, Carlsberg currently in 7th place, ahead of his Red Bull teammate in the 8th position, but it's all close up at the lead of the race here. Bandini all over the back of Cole and Rob. The pace is really picking up here from the Mercedes driver as they are dropping Dudley behind, who is not having quite as much fun now that he isn't in the clear air. Perhaps he'll start to come under some pressure from Niklas in a moment's time. Niklas had a good race, especially a recovery after an off on lap 1. Going through the chicane dropped him way down the order, but it looks like he's kept his nose clean throughout and has got himself back up into the fight here. GTX hasn't dropped that far back, and if these hard tyres do come good towards the end of the race, he is not out as that is a crash, and it's Porty. Porty has made a big mistake there, and I believe involved in that was also Daniel, and Porty is out of the race in the barriers, down just after the start of sector 2 before the back straight there. Let's see, is the car still there? And no, it has gone before we could get there to have a look at what has happened. But that's the other Aston Martin there of Timer Azim, who I believe is a lap down actually, who's having his own issues over there. But Carl and Rob continuing to maintain his lead at the moment, but with the power of DRS being just so strong, it is proving very hard to shake off Bandini, who is clinging on to this fight for the lead. However, Dudley has shown that if you do lose that DRS, even if you've had the pace to be even leading this race, as Dudley did, it still means that as soon as you sort of drop off out of that DRS range and perhaps get a bit of dirty air, it is so much harder. As Dunn comes into the pit lane for Red Bull, I believe that's an inevitable pit stop given that he was on the soft compound of tyres. But still, that's a shame for Dunn, but he could well get some points here today, as well, it would appear that just by surviving this race so far, you've got a good chance at points, as we see the drivers making their way through. The leaders here close again, but I just don't think they're close enough, as it would appear that Conrob just, the parts of the track where Carbon Rob is just so quick, and the parts where Bandini needs to get the run on him, which is proving really, really difficult so far in this race. He can get so close, but he just needs that extra tenth or two to get himself close enough, as that is Niklas and Dudley battling it into the chicane. These two having no issues getting alongside each other, but Niklas up into the 3rd position here, looking to get the podium. But Dudley, I'm sure, will not be looking to give that one up, as they are on the same amount of tyres, and Niklas, with a penalty, could well put that podium position back into the hands of Dudley. But with GTX, as I said, not that far behind, if those hard tyres do come good towards the end, perhaps it is not out of the question that GTX could perhaps get back onto the podium, and maybe, just maybe, if he does get a bit of grip in those tyres, and perhaps the grip goes away from those ahead of him, that maybe, just maybe, he can get back into the fight for the win. But looking at the ERS that he has used in this race so far, as that is Dudley into the pits, actually, that's a shocking tyre strategy from Dudley. He's clearly not got the confidence in the tyres to go to the end. I'd imagine he's going to the soft compound here, but that's changed the podium fight once more, as GTX finds himself now in what could be a potential podium. After a win in round 1, podium would be definitely a decent return in round 2, and would at his home race would be quite the way to keep things going in the championship. But yeah, Dudley coming to the pits, going for a soft. What do you think of that one, Storm?
Yeah, it's quite interesting with 7 laps to go. I don't know if you did notice, but Karen Robb has got a 3-second time penalty for corner cutting. So I think he's trying to really push as far as he can, as Bandini, should I say, is right on the back. As you said, he just needs that little bit of extra speed and space on the track to get that overtake done, as they are now just gone through the DRS zone for lap 20. Karen Robb is really defending very well this evening. He's trying to soak up all that pressure in the Alfa Romeo from the Mercedes car, but at the moment, if it stays the way it is, Bandini will take the race win.
So yeah, Bandini here perhaps going to sit back and just relax, which you'd imagine would be the sensible choice here, because there's no need to risk it. And looking at his ERS situation, he is, I believe now looking at it, he does have the pace to take the lead. But why risk it, you know? Take the lead, perhaps struggle a bit more, have to push that a little bit harder, but then perhaps he'll get a penalty. And that would give Karen Robb right back into the fight. But it's at the moment it's looking pretty much in control for Bandini. However, the question is, can he keep this pace up, and also can he avoid getting a penalty? Because if he does get a penalty, he's going to have to make that overtake on track, which is easier said than done. But I mean, if I'm Bandini, I'm the look to try and take the lead anyway. Maybe not for a while. Maybe wait to sort of maybe one of the later laps, but just sort of confirm your position in the race. Just because warnings can be removed. Perhaps there was an issue with one of Karen Robb's warnings. And maybe, just maybe, Bandini's thinking, well, maybe I just want to secure the win, make sure there's no questions, and that just so that he knows that he's going to sleep tonight a race winner in PSGL F9. But I mean, if the penalty is legitimate there, which 9 times out of 10 they are, for Karen Robb, then Bandini has nothing to really worry about in this stage of the race, because he is looking very, very comfortable.
Yeah, as I just seen that Bandini tried to have a go at Karen Robb through the DRS, but the door got closed, firmly shut on him as they exited the DRS straight. It is going to be quite close, I think, the last 6 laps, as Bandini is really getting ever so close, as they are now going to come to the start-finish line, as Bandini is going to get the run on the Alfa Romeo driver of Karen Robb. He's going to use that DRS and ERS, not as much into turn 1 and turn 2, as Daniel gets a 3-second time penalty. It's mediums versus mediums, but it's also 2 different constructor championship fighters in the race as well. Alfa Romeo versus Mercedes, as there's a virtual safety car.
Jetsi has crashed, come out of the chicane. He's lost his wing, which has put some debris on the track there. And that looks like Jetsi's chance of points is out of the window there for the AlphaTauri driver. But you know, he's got the number 13. It has not been his lucky day so far. We've got hyped coming to the pits there, perhaps hoping that there could be a late safety car, and with this virtual safety car he can perhaps get a free pit stop and put a charge on later on. But he is putting his chance of points very much at risk here, as it's a tricky situation now. He's going to be outside the points. Will those softs be good enough to get back inside the points? That is the question now. But now looking at the leaders, we've seen virtual safety cars throw a spanner in the work for one of the race leaders today. Can both of these two avoid getting a drive-through penalty? You'd think that would be a given that they're top drivers clearly, who've been leading this race throughout, but we've seen so far in this race that it can catch out anyone. So let's see now. Can Bandini take the fight to Karen Robb on track, or is he just going to cruise to the finish and get it on penalties? I said before the race that penalties will quite possibly decide this one. Perhaps I'm having a good day on predictions. It doesn't happen very often, but let's see how this goes, as the virtual safety car is still out on the circuit. As into the pits comes Niklas, got another driver who's using this chance, and that is a drive for a penalty, but it's for Jetsi, who is down in 14th position there. And the AlphaTauri's driver is having a tough all day here. Niklas pitted there, thinking he was going to pit on the virtual safety car. The virtual safety car pretty much almost immediately came in. So this is pretty much a normal speed pit stop here for Niklas. Perhaps just trying to make sure his tyres go to the end. But it's an interesting strategy, as that is a penalty for GTX there. So he is pretty out of the fight for the win. He was a bit behind anyway, as there's yellow flag, and that's for Dan, who is spun it around, coming through the final couple of corners. It's in a lot of spins today, which is not something I'm used to seeing at France. But I mean, it's clearly been a tricky track, because we've seen everyone making these sorts of mistakes throughout the day. So it's impressive that these leaders have been able to do as well as they have, and avoid the incidents which has become the key factor in today's race. I mean, if you look at sort of the top 6 drivers, they're all drivers that have sort of avoided incidents. I mean, look at Carlsbury. I'm fairly sure he had an off early in the race. Of course, it's been safety car since then, but still, to be in 4th place after having a moment earlier on in the race, it's quite the recovery. Is that is off the road again? Is that Jetsy again off the road? I do believe he may have been letting the leaders through there. Not 100% sure, but it is Carl and Rob who leads the way, and into the pits goes Jetsy. Did he lose his front wing again? No, he's, I think, maybe just going for a fastest lap, or perhaps he's going to retire in the pits. Or perhaps he's having his drive-through penalty. I'll get there in the end. Yeah, it's a close battle for the lead, and it's all and they have retired from the. I was right with one of the suggestions. They did indeed retire in the pits, but with 4 laps left in this race, Karen Robb versus FVR Bandini, who is going to come out on top?
Yep, 3 laps left in PSGL, PS4 for F9, as Dusty sets the fastest lap in the race so far with a 1:29.9. He will get the fastest lap point, as he is currently in P7 as a Sector 1 yellow flag. That is an Alfa Romeo. No, not an Alfa Romeo, an Alfa Tauri, apologies. I think that is Jetsy's retired car, I believe, as Bandini is possibly going to get the race win, because he's the only driver inside the top 3 that does not have a penalty. I don't know if he has any warnings at the moment, but he is really putting the pressure on that Alfa Romeo, apologies. So it's going to be an absolute battle for the race lead in F9 for the race win in France for either Bandini or Karen Robb. Just to a quick mention, both of the top 2 drivers at the moment, who is P1 and P2, did not finish Bahrain last week. To come back from a disappointing race in Bahrain last week after all the safety cars and VSEs we had, to potentially have a race win against some fantastic drivers in this tier as well, it's definitely going to kickstart their season in F9 for PSGL, as we are now on lap 25 of 27, 2 laps left, as they are still battling Bandini and Kyron Robb for that race win. At the moment, Bandini would take the race win because of the 3-second time penalty, as Carlsbury gets another 3-second time penalty, so he probably will drop quite far down the grid, as he's, I believe, got 9 seconds of penalties. So it's not a good day in the office for Red Bull. As the Pied Piper, I believe this is his first race in F9 this season. He's got himself up to P5, no penalty, so he may move up to P4 after the race has finished, as Nicholas gets another 3-second time penalty for multiple warnings, as Bandini looks to be getting Karen Robb on the corners, but Karen Robb just has that sheer straight line pace. As we just see, Bandini's got really up close to the car, as he was right on the back of the car on the diffuser, as they are now going to come round to start lap 26 of 27 in Paul Ricard for the French Grand Prix, as Bandini is going to activate DRS. He's going to use that ERS as well. He's going to get right up close. He's going to try and get that slipstream into turn 1. He's right on the back. He's not going to get the move done into turn 1. Is he going to get a better exit out of turn 2? He's got a little bit better exit, but he's still behind. Karen Robb is doing an absolute amazing job keeping Bandini behind in this race so far, as they are now 1.5 laps left of this race, as Nicolas sets the fastest lap with a 1:29.4 in the Scuderia Ferrari car this evening, as Bandini has got not much left of the track and the race to get a P1 in this race, as he's gone through the DRS straight, so he's not got long left, as they are now coming through the final corners to start the final lap in Paul Ricard for this PSGL F9 race on PS4 this evening. It is going to be Alfa Romeo versus Mercedes. It's going to be Karen Robb versus Bandini for the race win. As it looks like Bandini is going to get right up close for the potential overtake of Kyron Robb. He's right on the back of that Alfa Romeo. He knows he wants to get past for that race win. He wants to do it on the track. They are now going to come and start the final lap in Paul Ricard for this evening in PSGL F9. And they go down now to turn 1. Bandini is just a little bit off as they now go into turn 2. Bandini has dropped off a little bit, but Nicholas gets a 3-second time penalty, and it looks like Kyron Robb was really extending the track limits there. He knows that he's going to drop down to P2 in this race because he has got a time penalty that may be removed at the end of the race by the stewards, but it is all where it matters now. They're going to come through the DRS straight. Bandini is going to use the DRS and the ERS he's got. He's going to have to use everything he's got. He's going to really close up the gap. Is he going to go for it? He goes down the inside. Bandini goes down the inside. He gets the move done. Is he going to get it done? No, Kyron Robb comes back at Bandini, and Bandini gets the move done and takes the race lead from Kyron Robb on the final lap in France in Paul Ricard this evening. And Bandini gets the move done using the DRS and ERS, and he is going to now get to the finish line as quickly as possible, as he knows that Kyron Robb has that 3-second time penalties in the Alfa Romeo. It's been an absolute fantastic race battle between Bandini and Kyron Robb as they are now going to come through the last sector in the final corners. Bandini is going to really push that car on the mediums. They really will be worn on 18 laps. Bandini is now coming round the last corner. He had a really good race in France this evening. Bandini is going to be your PSGL F9 French Grand Prix provisional race winner on PS4.
Fantastic drive from Bandini there, sorry. But fantastic drive, and huge respect to him for actually making the move there on the final lap. Because you'd see a lot of drivers that perhaps sit behind and just let the penalty give him the win, but great credit there to Bandini to take that win on track.
Yeah, an absolute fantastic masterclass from the Mercedes driver this evening, as he had a really bad race, well, a poor race in Bahrain, as he retired from the race. But he has done the masterclass this evening in France. He has shown what that Mercedes car can do. So that's 2 different winners in PSGL F9 this season so far in season 29 on the PS4 platform. And it is going to be, I believe, shaping up to be a fantastic season in PSGL 4 F9 tier, as the rest of the grid is now just finishing. Also, GTX takes P3 on his home race in France this evening, as the Pied Piper takes P4, Dusty P5, Carlsbury takes P6, Dan in 7th, Nicholas in 8th, Dan in 9th, and rounding off the top 10 is MNT Ethan, getting his first points of the season. Then in 11th we have Hyped, we have Black Yoshi EMP12, and I'll just finish off the rest of the race results, as the race has now concluded with your top 3 of the race is Bandini in P1, Kyron Robb in P2, and GTX in P3. We'll just see who the remaining drivers, as we see the top 3 on the podium. It's a Mercedes win this evening for Bandini in Paul Ricard this evening, with both Alfa Romeos taking P2 and P3, so that's going to be a massive points boost for Alfa Romeo in the constructors in the F9 tier for PSGL, as we'll just wait for the champagne and celebrations between the drivers. And there is your provisional race classification for PSGL F9 on the PS4 platform. FVR_Bandini takes the race win for Mercedes Petronas. Then we have Kyron Robb in P2 with Alfa Romeo, and then we have GTX rounding off the top 3 for Alfa Romeo, and he takes a podium for his home race. And that is it for the PSGL F9 PS4 race in Paul Ricard this evening in France. What are your thoughts on this one, Jackson?
I mean, it was another absolutely fantastic race. We saw action throughout the field again. A bit of a drama chucked in there to spice things up, but all up front it was a great battle between the 2 drivers. GTX, I'm sure, will be quite happy with this. The two drivers ahead of him both didn't finish Bahrain, as you said, so in terms of the championship, it's still looking very good for GTX and for Alfa Romeo as well. Second and third, that is a great result for the team. So I think we're starting to see which drivers and teams are starting to prove themselves as perhaps the favourites for the championship. However, as we've seen, GTX only getting third in that race. I mean, if Bandini and Common Rob get a bit more luck here and there this season, and they could definitely get into that title fight and challenge the likes of GTX, but it's going to be all about consistency throughout the season. So it's going to be about who can keep up the form, and to get 2 podiums in the first 2 races, including a win, of course, and that is a great start to the season for GTX. So it's another thoroughly entertaining evening, and well, I just can't wait for next week, because I'm sure we'll get another absolute classic, and we'll continue to see as the PSGL Season 29 F9 continues to twist and turn in the championship fight, because it's sort of we're talking about the championship in it's round 2. I mean, I'm way ahead of time, but still, it's one of those things that you always have to keep an eye on just to see how it's going, and I look forward to see how it all plays out through the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting rest of the season in PSGL F9. If you have enjoyed the race and you do want to watch any of the action in PSGL for Season 29 on PC or PS4, then do hit that like button and subscribe to the channel and put the notification bell on. I have been one of the commentators this evening, NRX Storm, and your other commentator has been Jackson, and it's good night from both of us.